So in the last class we saw how we can interface the memory chips to 8086. Today we will learn about how to interface input output devices to 8086. Okay, so there are two ways how an input output devices can be interfaced with the 8086. Okay, one is known as IO mapped, the other one is known as the memory mapped. Okay, so in the memory mapped scheme, what we are going to do is some of the memory spaces. Okay, some of the memory spaces, we know 8086 can have unique 1 MB memory space. So some of the memory space can be earmarked for input output devices, and you can connect the input output devices in those instead of those memory elements. So that is one way of doing it. The other way is to independently have some IO devices connected in the IO address space, right? When we do it into the memory address space, then we can access it through the normal move command and those commands which we generally use for memory address. Suppose I connect an input output device to a memory location FFFF, right? Then when I write a command like move some data from AX into this like move FFFF, move AX FFFF, then the input data will be fetched from this memory location, onto which instead of the chip you have to now modify your address decoding line, so that whenever this address is placed, that but instead of that from the memory address, it has to go and select the input output device. Okay, and the commands whatever we are going to use are the same commands which we which we generally use for memory addressing. Okay, so that is one scheme. The other scheme is to separately put IO devices. Okay, and then use the in out commands. Okay, when we write in, we are going to learn about the commands which we are going to instruction sets which are related with IO devices. So once we use those instructions, then IO devices can be separately connected. So these are the two different schemes which are available. Okay, there are some advantages and disadvantages of both these schemes, so we'll see each one of them. Isolated IO devices are treated separately from memory. Okay, they are treated, so one full MB address space is available to use as memory. Now the memory doesn't get curtailed because of the IO devices. IO devices are going to be connected separately and memory is going to be connected separately. That's why one full MB address space is available for the memory. Separate instructions are provided in instruction to perform isolated. So for IO operations, there are separate instructions which are available, right? They are not same as memory. And the only disadvantage out here is when we write the IO commands, okay, all the data transfer will happen only through AL or AX register. Okay, so when we learn about those commands, it will be very clear that all the data transfer from the 8086 to the IO devices and from the IO devices to the 8086 can be only through these registers. Okay, if it's a byte, it has to be through AL, and if it is a word, it has to be through AX register. So that is the disadvantage. Okay, while coming to memory mapped IO, so in this case IO devices are treated as an memory. Full MB cannot be used as a memory since it has become that becomes a disadvantage. Advantage is no separate instructions are required in this case. You can use the available memory instructions, so that can be used, and since it's going to be treated like a memory, there is no restriction that data has to be transferred only from AL register. Okay, so other register we know that data can be transferred from any of the registers to the memory and vice versa, right? So that is the reason that restriction of using only AL or AX register will not be there when we are using memory mapped IO. right? So let's see what are the modes of IO instructions. There are three modes. These are the three types of instructions which are available in 8086 for transfer of data to and from IO devices. One is known as direct IO, the second one is known as indirect IO, and the third one is string. So we will see each one of them now. So there are some in-out commands which are used for direct and indirect. So it transfers the data between IO devices and the microprocessor's accumulator. It could be AL, AX, or in higher versions it could be EAX also. So IO address is stored in. So these are the format of the instructions. So for the indirect addressing, the address is stored in DX register. A 16-bit IO address can be stored in the DX register, and then we can use the indirect mode of addressing. Or in the direct mode addressing, directly we can specify the byte, but in this case and one single byte instruction is specified. So these are the two. So these are some examples it will become. So here you have, this is a direct mode of addressing in which I write in AL19H. So what happens is, since it is AL is specified here and the port address is specified, if you see the port address is a single byte address. So but then while it is being decoded, so obviously rest of the 16-bit address lines, it is actually 16-bit address lines, right? So rest of the bits will be taken as 0. Now 8 bits are saved from are saved into AL from the IO port specified by this byte. Okay, so you need to decode this 19H. You have to take this address and select you have to make a decoding circuit which will select the particular IO, right? So you have to take this 19H, or which will be available in the address lines from A0 to A7, and make an decoder circuit and select the IO port. Okay, and then once that IO gets activated, then 8-bit data are saved from that AL from that port into the AL register. So this is known as direct addressing, right? Or this is known as indirect addressing, in which we write in ALDX. Okay, now in this case the 16-bit address is available in the DX register. Okay, so you don't have to put a square bracket out here. It is implied that data cannot, when we write in, it is known as it is well known that data has to come from an input output port, and DX is the register containing the address of the port. Okay, so the 16-bit address will be available here. In this case, the 16-bit address will be placed onto the address bar that needs to be decoded, and then data request will be fetched from the IO port into the AL register. Okay, this is another indirect addressing in which we write in AX and DX. Since it is AX now, it is assume, and we might have connected an 16-bit input output device in that port. Okay, so accordingly 16 bits will be data will be fetched from that port into the AX register. Then you can this is again direct addressing, where you have AX 20H. Sorry, this should have been 16 bits here, because it is AX, so there's an error here. 16 bits data are saved to AX from input output port. So this has to be changed. Okay, so this is here in this case a word will be fetched from the input output port to the AX register. Okay, so similarly you can have some out commands in which out DX AX. In this case 16 bits will be returned to the port which is specified by DX from AX register, from the AX register. Or you could have direct addressing out 19H AL, in which data will be returned to the port which is 0019H. So only 16 bits are decoded, right, when we are doing an input output port. So it is not all the 20 lines are not. So when we write in and out commands, so the maximum available is 64 kilobytes. Okay, the maximum number of input output ports you can have is 64. So only 16 bits will be activated in the bus bar. Rest of the will be kind of don't care, so we will not be using that for decoding. So only A0 to A16 bus bars will be used for decoding for decoding and selecting the chip of the IO, selecting the IO device. Okay, so that needs to be remembered, unlike a memory operation where all the 20 lines are decoded. For IO operations only 16 address lines are decoded. Okay.
Excuse me, sir.
Yeah, tell me.
So in indirect addressing, since we pass the register containing the port address,
Yeah.
what will be the physical address of the register? Since DX is the offset, which segment will be taken to calculate physical address?
No, only 16 bits are required, right? So in this case, so there will be no
Okay.
physical address calculations in this case,
Yes, sir. Understood.
in input and output devices. Okay, right? Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. So if you keep asking questions, so it will be the things which I miss out, that comes out, and then that also reduces my pace. Otherwise, I tend to go a little fast. Okay. So keep asking me questions. Okay. So like it has now, it is clear that no, there is no requirement of physical address calculations. It is only because directly we are either even in AL, this only the direct address port number will be placed onto the address bus bar, and here also directly the 16-bit data which is available in the DX register will be placed onto the address bar. So these are the in-out commands, direct and indirect mode of addressing, which is available in 8086. Okay. Okay.
So one more doubt.
Yeah, tell me.
For port addresses, for port numbers which are greater than 256, why do we do indirect addressing? I mean, why don't we just pass it directly in the opcode itself? So it'll become a 3-byte code, but that doesn't happen. Why does it not happen?
They've just because they've just made it simpler. So whenever there is a, so that to restrict this opcode into a small within one machine cycle. Okay, so generally you don't have so many input output devices connected to an 8086, right? So if you keep it, so generally all see what you will have, keyboard, mouse, or input output. So there will be most probably no requirement of going to input output devices more than 256. Okay, so it is an so since this is going to be maximally used, so it is an it is wise to keep it as a small opcode, right? If you allow it to be 256, unnecessarily it will require 2 machine cycles to fetch the data, right? So intentionally it is kept as simple, so that we can so that the one which is used maximum is optimized. Is it okay?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So there is other some bulk transfer instructions also, like we have moves command. So similarly we have something like known as ins b, right? Here input ins b, it inputs a byte from an input output port specified in the DX register, and stores in this memory location, which is given by ES and DI. Okay, ES and DI, this will decide the destination memory address where the data will be stored, and then it increments or decrements the increases or decreases the DI register. After that, once the data is there, one is fetched. Okay, depending on the direction flag which you have set. Okay, so we know how to set the direction flag and clear the direction flag, right? STD and CLD commands. So that whether it is clear, if it is 0, DI will increase. If it is an 1, di will decrease. So that direction will be set here. So you can use this ins b. Okay, along with this, okay, the port address is not the dx data doesn't get changed. Okay, because from the single port you can get multiple data. So di will increase after fetching the data. So you can use, like in the move we have learnt an repeat instruction also, right? So you can use a repeat and a counter and fetch multiple data from an input output port, and at a say, specific interval, and keep pushing into the ES register, whose DI will keep incrementing or decreasing. So we can use these kind of bulk transfer instructions also for input output, right? So you have ins W also. So here also a word will be transferred, and then now di will increase or decrease by 2 bytes. Okay, after getting the data from the port. Okay, similarly ins d also we will get a double word, and in that case di will increase or decrease by 4 bytes, right? Similarly you have outs b command for this also for bulk transfer. So output byte will be which is available in ds si. Okay, now instead of an ESDI, now it is going to be ES and SI. Okay, this bracket E is given for the 80386. So we just neglect that, and remember that it is just DSSI for 8086 to the input port specified in the DX register. Again, the output port will be specified by the DX register, and then it increments or decreases the flag register. Again, in this case also increases the SI depending on the direction flag. Okay, so similarly you can have a bulk transfer of word or double word also. So these are some of the instructions. So this is only the summary of the various instructions. There was some error out here. So I have crossed it and put dx. So I'll share this. Once you share this, just go through. These are all the same things which we discussed in AL port number, right? Ins b, ins w, ins w. So these are all the instructions we already discussed. It is just summarized in this table. So I'll share this PDF so you can go through this, right? Okay. So these are again some more examples so that things become clear. In AL27H, okay, this is direct addressing. So in which data is whatever is the data available in this port number 27, that will be brought into the AL register. Okay, data flows only through the accumulator. Okay, that is important. So whenever we can't write in BL27H, suppose there is some data which is available in BX register and we need to transfer it to the output, then you will have to split the instructions into two. Like first you need to get the data from BX to AX, and then we can use an out 26H AX. So in this case now if you have to transfer a data from BX to 26H port number 26X, we need to use two instructions. Okay, so it is important here that only data for using input output commands can only go through the accumulator. Okay. Now in the indirect addresses, the port address is preloaded into the DX register. So we can give an 16-bit address out into the DX register. So and the string it allows direct through the accumulator from the IO devices. String operations also we have seen. Okay, so input output devices are connected to the processor through ports. Okay, now what is a port is? Port is just first of all it just a register. Okay, so so these registers could be 8-bit, 16-bit or 13-bit and a byte, 32-bit. Okay, for 8086 it's going to be 8-bit or 16-bit registers. And this these registers need to be selected when we place an address onto the port address onto the address bar, right? So address have to be decoded. So the address of these ports can be from 000 to the 16-bit address. Okay, so these ports will have an address specified to them. So it is accessed by the instruction in or out. So let's see some of the input devices, how it looks like. This is an just a simple switch where we can give a digital input to the microprocessor. Okay, a single bit in this is just showing a single bit where you can have an switch, right? You have a switch out here. So if you see, if you close the switch, and the input will be 0, or if you open the switch, it will be 1 out here, right? So you generally don't, you might be thinking why to have a resistor and this arrangement rather than just have a VCC and a switch, okay, and leave it like that. So in that case, what happens when you leave a switch open, this terminal will be hanging, right? So that is not an so when it is hanging, it need not be 1 or 0. So that depends on whatever is the stray charges available at that node, okay. So that could induce noise. So that is why we generally have this kind of system. If you see here, okay, when the switch is open, you have an positive volt VCC connected to this node, okay, and when you open when the switch is closed, you will find a ground is connected here, right? So if you see in both the switch open and closed connections, you have some specific value, either 0 or 1 connected to the node, and it is not hanging, okay. So there is no noise induced into the pins, okay. So that is why we have this kind of arrangement. When the switch is open, it is 1, and when the switch is closed, it is 0, okay. Similarly, if you want to connect an diode, right, LED, so you can have this kind of arrangement, okay. If you want active high signal which is coming here, so you can connect an diode, and through a resistance you can ground it, like we saw in the digital class also, because the voltage available here will be 5 volt. So you need to connect one resistance here to drop the voltage across this diode to 2 volt. Generally most of the diodes work in 2 volts. So you need to connect a series resistance. Or if you want an active low, that is whenever you are placing a 0 at the output, you want the LED to glow, then you can have this configuration where you have connected an VCC and a resistance, and through the LED you connect it to the pin of the port. So you can have this kind of arrangement also. In between the data bus and the IO devices, we generally connect buffers. Okay, now why do we connect buffers is because otherwise there will be some noise, because in these data lines, so these buffers, they eliminate the noise, right? Suppose if the data bus is which is coming through a PCB into the IO devices, there are some, it would pick up some noise, like instead of a 0 volt it could be 0.1, 0.2, 0.3, those kind of noises can pick up. Similarly, at the high voltage, instead of 5 volt it can be 5 plus minus some stray voltages. So these buffers, they first of all eliminate these noises, okay. So they'll make a smooth signal, perfect signals to drive the outputs, and also it provides an isolation between the microprocessor and the input output devices, okay. So whatever is the stray extra voltages which might come in the input output devices, that will not get coupled with the 8086, and it will keep your processor safe. So that is the reason we use tri-state buffers in between the data bus and the IO devices, okay. Any microprocessor system, when here it says must be latched, okay. There is also we use buffers, and also we use latch also, okay. Latch is when we are driving an output port, okay. We use buffers in when we are using an port as an input device, whereas when we are trying to couple an output device, we need to put an latch, right? Because suppose we are connecting an LCD display, right, and or a 7-segment display to 8086, okay. So we need to continuously give that signal for that LCD to glow and show the data, right, or the 7-segment segment too. But the microprocessor might be doing other functions also, so it might give that particular data Okay, say it wants to display a figure of 4, so it will give a data corresponding to 4, and then it will go and perform some other function, and whenever there is a requirement to change the display from 4 to say 5, 6 or some other value, then it can come back and again give the fresh instruction to the output port, right? So in between, the output port has to remain no, it is continuously show the display as 4. So what we do is we use a latch in between. Okay, so that is the requirement, and we use an latch in between. So we'll see that. So these things together, this buffer, latch and all this function is done by something known as programmable peripheral interface, PPI. So we will learn about these PPI devices in the next class. There are some Intel has provided some PPIs which are specifically meant for 8086. Okay, but today we will try and further discuss a few without using PPI, how we can interface IO devices with using buffers and latches. That we will see today. In the next class we will see about the PPI devices. Okay, this is an simple output port which can be, this is how it is connected. So if you see my microprocessor, there will be some data lines, and I said we require an latch. Okay, so this is a latch which is 74373. It is an it is an 8-bit latch. Okay, so there are 8 latches, whereas when we are driving an 7-segment display, okay, so data, only 4 data lines are used, right? So these are the 4 data output. We will put it into a 7-segment decoder, and then you have the this will convert it into the 7 different outputs, which is given to the 7-segment display out here. Now if you see, now we also need to use the address decoder out here, right? Suppose this we have given as, assigned it as a port A 8, right? So now for port 8, so these are the address lines. Okay, 0 an A0, A1, A2 and an A3. So these 4 lines will be used as an address decoder to select this chip. Okay, so whenever we this on the address lines 0001 is placed, okay, this chip will get selected. Also so there could be a memory operation also in which the same address will come in, and in that case this chip should not be selected, right? Only when we write out port and out command, and only then this chip needs to be selected. Okay, so we can use this input, output and memory signal which is available, and also the read write signal is available. So this is shown here as input, output, write. Okay, write bar signal, but it's not a single signal. Okay, this needs to be generated. That is an input, output and write bar signal needs to be generated by using 2 different signals from the 8086, and one will be memory stroke input output bar, and other will be the write bar signal. Okay, in combination of that, this, although it is shown here as a single pin, this also needs to be generated externally by using those 2 pins of the 8086. Okay, in memory stroke input output, and in that case, and that we are going to use it as a clock. So this chip will be selected, and whenever this input output, whenever we are giving that instruction of out this port number, okay, out AL port number, we will, when we give that command, so input, output and the write signal will go low. So this will go this will go, since it's active low, this will go low. So this will so the input, output, write bar. So you will have to generate this signal accordingly, so that the clock gets triggered here. So this data will be captured into this latch. Okay, is this clear to all of you? So this signal needs to be generated. This is the address corresponding to the port 8. So this is how we can connect it using an latch, and an output port can be connected using an latch. Okay, so there is one more example in which I am going to show you how to connect a simple input port. Okay, so in this input port we don't require an latch, because whenever 8086 wants to read the data, Okay, so this data needs to be put onto the bus bar. So we just have to isolate these switches from the bus bar, so we put an buffer in between. Alright, so in this case also, so whatever is the address, port address is placed, that needs to be decoded. So this is only decoding the specific address, port address here in this case, right? So now this by using an NAND gates, and also to select this chip we are going to use this input output and a read bar signal. Okay, this input output read bar signal again needs to be generated from the outputs available in the two pins, memory stroke input output and the read signal. So those two signals can be combined and we can generate this input output. This we studied in the memory input output class, right? How to generate these signals, input output read bar signal also. So this signal also will be used to activate this buffer. Okay, so this is a direction which is grounded here, so that this data is flowing from this to in this direction. Okay, so this is how we can use an tri-state buffer, and then couple the input port to an 8086. So this is known as an port in this case, right? These address lines and this together will be known as an port. Okay, so you can have now, if you see, many of you might be thinking you can have only 2 to the power of 16 input output ports total, but that's not the case. You can have 2 to the power of 16, that is 64k input ports and 64k output ports, right? Because if you see the chip, you have to select this chip, right? So you can use the read and write signals to select the chips along with the 64 lines, along with the 16 lines. Okay, you are also using the read line and the write line, okay, to select one of these chips. So essentially now I have 17-bit information to select input output ports. So 16 bits for the input and 16 bits for the output ports. So you can use this combination, the same two circuits which we did here. It is shown here out here. So if you see, a total of 64k input devices can be connected and 64k output devices can be connected to 8086. So you just have to make an address decoding circuit which selects the appropriate chip using these 16-bit lines, and also the input output and input output memory output which is available from the 86, and also the read write signal which is available from the 8086. So is this clear how this figure of 64 input and output has come to all of you? Is it okay? Okay, so and then, okay, this is the last slide where it's shown that whenever you connect an input device, okay, whenever you're using mechanical switches, we generally give it through debouncing circuits. Okay, so that whenever we are switching it from 0 to 1 or 1 to 1, these mechanical switches will make because it's a mechanical switch, it is not that you throw the switch from one place to other. It will go and make a single contact, it will go touch that contact, it will jump from that and make multiple contacts there before it finally settles down. So that will cause kind of a pulse train out here. So to avoid that multiple spikes, we use an debouncing circuits, right? So I explained how a debouncing circuit works in the digital design class. I think we have also simulated this in the hobby class, so you can have a look at that video which is there in the in my channel, in my YouTube channel. If you go to the digital design hobby class, so you will find the debouncing 6 circuit operation is explained there, and we have also done some simulations in LTSpice. Okay, so this presently not required for your 8086 course exam point of view. Just if you are interested, you can revisit this video lecture. So this generally when we give an a mechanical switch which is connected, so we give it through a debouncing switch. Okay, so this debouncing switch, you can either make it through NAND gates, or a chip is also available, 6816. So this chip is also available, in which you can directly give the input out here, and you can power this. So this NAND gate implementation and the resistor thing is there within this chip, so you can use this kind of chip also. Okay, so with that, then we come to an end of this lecture. In the next lecture, we'll start with the peripheral devices and interface devices, which is provided by by the Intel. We'll take on the internal architecture of those chips. Okay, so that's all for today. If you have any doubts, you can ask me, or we'll stop it here. Okay, thank you.